Good morning, Bucknutters. Welcome to the Bucknuts Morning 5 here on Monday, December 20th, 2021. I am Dave Biddle. I am joined by Steve Helwagen. Steve, let's start out with an interesting story from your end. You were mid-flight on Friday on the way to Vegas to cover the Ohio State-Kentucky basketball game when word came down that the game was canceled because of a COVID outbreak in Ohio State's program. So how did you get the word? Just tell the listeners that interesting story.
Yes, it was actually Thursday afternoon. We had football interviews, I think, from 11:30 to 2 that day, and I was on a 2:20 flight. So I went to the first hour of the interviews and then bugged out and headed over to Port Columbus and met my son, who came in, and he and I and a friend of mine and his son, who's a college student, the four of us were going out. They were going, obviously, had tickets to go to the Ohio State versus Kentucky game, the CBS Sports Classic there in Las Vegas. And so we're about 90 minutes into the flight. We're over Missouri somewhere. We were on a direct flight out of Port Columbus going to Vegas. And my son said, "Ooh, I think there's some news." And we got on, these planes are equipped with Wi-Fi. So we get on there and we see that Ohio State's made the announcement that they had to cancel and pull out of the Classic. And the team was supposed to fly on Thursday from Columbus to Las Vegas, but apparently everybody needed to be tested beforehand. And Coach Holtman had actually done an interview segment with the local media at 9:30 on Thursday morning, and Adam Jardy from the Dispatch had asked him, because there were starting to be COVID cancellations all over the country, asked him, what are you guys doing about this? Is there raised awareness about this, what you should and shouldn't be doing, to kind of stay away from situations where you might contract the virus or whatever, even a breakthrough case. And Coach admitted that there'd been some breakthrough cases with the staff during this past year, but he gave you no inkling or inclination that anybody had tested that day, and perhaps didn't even know because they were going to practice, and presumably, before or after practice or whatever, they had these tests come up. And they've shut down everything. I don't think they're practicing as a group. I assume people are getting individual workouts who are healthy enough to go in and do that. And they've already canceled the game for this week against Tennessee Martin. But here we are 90 minutes into the flight. And I suppose had we known before the flight, we would have all put our heads together and figured out if we were even going to take the trip out there. But you get out there and you realize really quickly that if you want to come back a day or two earlier, it's going to cost you an arm and a leg, to upgrade your flight to another day on less than 7 days notice. Plus, I'd already prepaid for the hotel room. We stayed at the Luxor, which is walking distance to the T-Mobile Arena, and we had a great time. I mean, it turned out to be a great weekend to sit there and watch all the bowl games. I think there were 2 bowl games Friday, 6 more on Saturday. Plus, I believe 1 NFL game Saturday and a slate of NFL games yesterday. So, and some college basketball. I mean, there were some college basketball games mixed in there as well. So we had a kind of a regular cornucopia of sports to observe and enjoy there at the sports book. And we had a fun time. I had not been to Vegas, Dave, in probably 10 or 11 years, other than we flew out of there after the Clemson Ohio State game in Arizona a couple of years ago. My family came out, and the best way for them to get to Arizona was through Las Vegas. So we drove to Las Vegas and flew home on like a red-eye flight. So I was there for about 6 hours then, but I really hadn't been there in about 10 or 12 years, and it's changed quite a bit. The city center is new, although I didn't even go over there for some reason. I guess that's the one place we didn't go. We went down to the Circa, which is brand new, and they have a huge sports book there and outdoor sports book with the swimming pool and everything. Although the temperatures were only in the 50s, so there wasn't a whole lot of swimming going on. But that's something you got to see to believe. And just we had a great time. We moved from property to property. I played low limit table stuff and just kept it. I didn't want to get beat up too bad, and as it turned out, ended up around even. So I'm pretty happy about that. But we had some good food and good company, and just really enjoyed our time there. Kind of a 3-day getaway, and back this week, and now beginning of next week, right after Christmas, I'll be flying out to Los Angeles for the bowl game. So yeah, a lot of travel in a busy month here in December.
Yeah, we're just 12 days away from the Rose Bowl. We'll get into that in a moment. I do want to ask you, because this is, it's not just college basketball that's being hit. NFL games are getting postponed. As we know, the Browns game was moved from Saturday until today. There's 2 games that were moved from Sunday until Tuesday. We have 2 games tonight, and then 2 games tomorrow, all because of COVID concerns. What the NFL has done, they've changed their protocols. They've now said, and I completely agree with this, if you're fully vaccinated, and they're just not going to test these players. A lot of these players were asymptomatic and they were getting tested even though they were vaccinated, and then they were moving games around. So the NFL's decided, listen, if you're vaccinated, we're just not going to test you. How big of a concern is this, if at all, for the rest of college basketball season? Maybe even, we're already in college football bowl season, or is it not much of a concern? Do you think this might just be a blip on the radar, Steve?
Well, they may need to change some protocols and policies to mitigate what's going to happen to the schedule here the rest of the season. It's unfortunate that Ohio State and Kentucky did not get to play, although Kentucky, after losing to Notre Dame last Saturday, it's obvious that Coach Cal got under the hood and really had his guys fired up. Plus, you had such an emotional week for the state of Kentucky with everything that happened there with the weather, and they came out and played probably the best game I've seen a Coach Cal team play in several years on Saturday, and they just blew North Carolina off the map. And it was actually Kentucky's first win over a Power 5 conference team. So I think in one way, Ohio State possibly dodged a bullet there, because Kentucky, if they play like that, could have beaten Ohio State. I liked Ohio State's chances to win that game going into it, but Kentucky really played like a house of fire. And the unfortunate thing is the fans are not going to get to see Ohio State play Kentucky this year. It's not been rescheduled. And the same thing goes for the game this week, Tennessee Martin, that has been canceled. Ohio State will offer refunds for that. And I have to give the people who promoted the CBS Sports Classic credit as well. They gave anybody who asked for a refund a full refund prior to the games on Saturday, or the game on Saturday, which Ohio State and UCLA had fans in Vegas, obviously, who had come to see the game and got their full ticket purchase refunded. So I give the promoters credit for doing that. In terms of the season, I think you've got some definite problems. Ohio State, their next game is against New Orleans on December the 30th, and I don't think they would have played back to Wisconsin on December the 11th. So that is a 19-day respite for them. And they were playing great basketball. They'd won, 4 or 5 games in a row there. Duke, Penn State, Towson, Wisconsin, maybe 4 in a row. And we're really starting to put it together a little bit. And now you have this respite. You hope it doesn't, cause a problem for their season. And I think that, again, everything's got to be done for the safety and the well-being of the student athletes and the players. But if it is safe in general terms to go forward and have asymptomatic players playing in games, then who may or may not have the virus, I'm not sure if that's a good thing or not. It seems like that's maybe more of a common sense thing at this point, because otherwise, one of my friends tweeted put on Twitter, you're not going to have sports unless you come to this realization, because it looks like we are going into what's going to be a heavy situation with a lot of breakthrough cases. So I don't know. I'm not as I've said for almost 2 years now, I'm not an epidemiologist. So I'll take whatever wisdom that people give me. But, I think that rational thinking people should come to some kind of an understanding on this, because, if the risks are infinitesimal, then, I don't know why you don't go ahead and play. But at any rate, I'll leave that to the people who do that. But otherwise, I think we're going to have to expect that games are going to be canceled. That Memphis, Tennessee thing was ridiculous, that they got positive tests, the morning of the game or whatever, and everybody's in Nashville and everybody goes away and there's no game. So that was really sad moment.
Yeah, so we'll see what happens. Like I said, I think the NFL has now, has the blueprint. Maybe college athletics will follow suit there. All right, let's get into the Rose Bowl. 12 days away till the Buckeyes face off against Utah in the Rose Bowl. Buckeyes favored by 6.5. I've had a lot of people ask me, well, is Ohio State motivated for this game? We were over there for, as you mentioned, last Thursday for on-campus media day for the bowl game. I got the sense, Steve, that the players are highly motivated. They're ticked off about losing to Michigan and all the negative talk about, how they played and being called soft and all this. I get the feeling they're motivated for this game. But Utah's a good physical team. Your thoughts on this matchup and maybe how you feel about Ohio State's motivation?
I don't sense that outside of the building, there's a lot of anticipation for Ohio State to play Utah, just because Utah is not one of the big name brands in college football. I think, some of the recent bowl games Ohio State's played that have been outside the playoff, like USC, there wasn't even that much excitement for them to play USC in the Cotton Bowl, and that was USC. And Notre Dame in the Fiesta Bowl, Washington in the Rose Bowl, and then they've been in the playoffs the last 2 years. So I think outside the program, it's not that much excitement. I was told Ohio State was given 20,000 tickets, sold 13,000 of them, and returned the rest to the Rose Bowl. I have not heard a figure on what Utah got or what Utah has sold, or if Utah has now gotten into the Ohio State allotment and sold some of the Ohio State allotment as well. I honestly don't know, but I think there is more excitement, at least outside the teams from the Utah standpoint, because they're going against one of the big name brands with Ohio State. Now, for the players, I think there's plenty of motivation, and I think the coaches have handled this perfectly. They have gotten behind the scenes, and they've had team meetings, and they have had very spirited, very physical practices, and they have made it a point to say we need to prove a point to the nation that we are still the biggest, baddest guy on this block, and go out and run the football and stop the running game in the Rose Bowl and be a physical team. And I think that's what the mission is for Ohio State, to prove to itself and to prove to the country that was just a one-time situation. And in a lot of ways, and as I talk to people both in the sport and outside the sport, I think that it was just a matter of human nature. You had a situation where I don't think their heads were on straight to start the game. You mishandle a kickoff, you fumble the first snap. It's cold. The fans are against you. Now you're having false starts because there's too much noise, and you're making mistakes, and you become tentative, and you're no longer taking the challenge to Michigan. Michigan has landed one punch and sees an opening to land more punches, and now they're bringing the fight to you, and it was more than Ohio State could handle. So I don't think that this is a trend or something that, we've surrendered our position as one of the most physical teams in college football. I think it's still there. They just have to go out and prove it. I mean, this wasn't a problem until it was a problem. And now I know there were defensive issues all season, and there were a couple games where they did struggle to establish the run, but I think some of that, had to do with other factors. But I think they're plenty physical enough. They just have to go out and play to that level, and I'll be interested to see what Ohio State team shows up. But as long as you got C.J. Stroud on your side, I think you're Travion Henderson and at least Jackson Smith and the Jigba, I think you're going to be okay.
That's exactly right. And let's look at some guys that are not going to play or maybe are on the fence to play in the Rose Bowl, and guys that are on the fence in regard to whether to come back next year or turn pro. Now, we know Cam Brown is coming back next year. That's great news. He let us know that on Thursday on Twitter. Earlier in the day, it sounded like he was leaning towards leaving when he was speaking with us. Then maybe he was trying to set it up so he could have his day in the sun, as I mentioned on Friday's show. I don't fault him at all for that. His moment in the sun there where he announced he's coming back. Zach Harrison's interesting to me. I had a chance to ask him. He's definitely playing in the Rose Bowl, but he's undecided if he's going to come back next year, Steve. And I asked him, I said, are you leaning one way or the other? You don't have to say which way, but are you leaning one way or the other? And he said, yes. I said, do you want to tell us which way you're leaning? And he said, no. So, which is kind of a funny moment. I said, I didn't think you would, but I had to ask. So Zach Harrison will play in the Rose Bowl, undecided about next year. Sounds like Garrett Wilson will not play in the Rose Bowl. I don't think he was even at practice recently for the Buckeyes, which jives with what I was told weeks ago, that he was not going to play in the Rose Bowl. Obviously, Garrett Wilson's going to turn pro. Also hearing Sevyn Banks might not play in this game. He might turn pro. That's one of those guys, man. He might be, in danger of being an undrafted free agent if he turns pro. Your thoughts on some of those guys? Cam Brown, he's coming back. Zach Harrison on the fence for next year. Sevyn Banks sounds like he's out the door. Garrett Wilson sounds like he's out the door. Maybe I'm forgetting a few guys as well. Nicholas Petit-Frere for next year. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, Cam Brown, to me, I think that's awesome that he has decided he's going to come back. And I think awesome in the sense that it's a great move for Ohio State, because I think when he's healthy, he has shown that he can be a Big Ten starting cornerback. And I think he and the freshman Denzel Burke put together a good season playing together in the times that they did. Sevyn Banks is kind of in a catch-22 situation because you have those other two corners. I just think back, and I think these were the three guys. I think it was Damon Arnett, Kendall Sheffield, and Denzel Ward. The one year, you basically had three starters between two positions, and they rotated. I think two of them started about every game, and the other one, you knew he was going to play quite a bit. And I sensed that would be the situation, although there were games when it seemed like Banks was healthy and he didn't play. So I don't know, but perhaps he feels like he's been squeezed out at Ohio State from his starting job and wouldn't be a starter at Ohio State next year, kind of like the Antonio Pittman quandary that you knew Beanie Wells was going to be the guy. Well, I may as well go pro since there's no spot for me here, which is a weird position to be in. So maybe he would transfer and play somewhere else where he knows he could start. I think he's just in a real catch-22 situation there. So I don't know. Zach Harrison would definitely benefit from a year coming back. I don't know what to say about him. I try not to be too negative about the players. The talk was that he worked so hard, was so committed and everything else. And in the big games, he just, I don't know that he played to a level that would say that this is a surefire NFL player. Now, frontline NFL player, first 2-day draft pick, whatever, which would be top 4 rounds, I believe. So I don't know what to say about him.
Top 3 rounds. Yep.
Yeah, I think he would benefit by coming back and putting himself in the first round with a huge year. With some of its scheme, I don't know. There were times he was crashing inside and the ball carrier ran right by him and they got gashed in the run game. And was that scheme? I can't say. I don't know. What I was always told was he was playing his assignment. He was doing what he was supposed to do. And then my counter to that was, well, what he was asked to do was the wrong thing against that play call because they abused you. So to me, he's got raw physical ability, but is he a great football player? I think there's a little bit of a disconnect there. So I think I'd like to see more out of him before I'd plop down a first round pick on him. And then, some of these other guys, Chris Olave, I feel like somebody mentioned he was at practice, but not practicing. Not sure what that means. If maybe he had a day off for mileage or maintenance or whatever, he's had some little nicks and cuts here along the way and still answers the bell every week and, doesn't need to practice every day for 3 hours to get ready for this game, obviously. So I made the comment that I like Chris Olave and I like Garrett Wilson. I think they're complementary players. Garrett Wilson is this 9 out of 10 athletic freak who's just going to make these high-end plays. but the guys he's going against at the NFL are going to be 9 out of 10 athletic freak cornerbacks. And I think he's got some great value, but I wouldn't be surprised if Chris Olave, who is a technician, is a guy that sticks in that league for 10 years, just because he does all the little things, route running, blocking, and everything else so well. So, you're tantalized by what Garrett Wilson gives you, but is Chris Olave actually the better answer at the NFL? I don't know. So love them both. I would hope that Chris Olave, to me, it's a perfect sunset moment for his career, 2 hours from his hometown near San Diego, to come up there and play in the Rose Bowl in front of his family, probably 50 people, and have a day. And Garrett Wilson, does he need to put a cherry on top of his career with a huge Rose Bowl? No, he's probably made himself. I know that Kuiper, I think, had him at 20 and Olave at 25, something like that in the first round. Those are the only two sure first rounders. Nicholas Petit-Frere, to me, right now would be a second or third round pick. That Michigan game's got to give you a lot of concern. He just, again, played very tentative to me. And obviously Hutchinson, had a day for Michigan. So I don't know if one bad game is going to downrate him so much, but he's a tremendous offensive lineman regardless. I would think he would benefit from another year coming back, but could also see, if he sees himself as a second round pick, that he may as well just go on out. So those are probably the big ones. There just wasn't a lot, unfortunately, for Ohio State. There just wasn't a lot of high end guys. I know Tyreek Smith got his degree, and that probably wrapped up his thought of playing again at Ohio State. I know he signed up for the Senior Bowl. He's another guy in the same Zach Harrison situation that would benefit if he came back, but he's closing the door on it. So, good luck to him. And I guess we'll just see what happens with these guys on the first.
Good stuff from Steve Helwagen. Thank you very much, Steve. Thank you to all listeners out there for tuning into the show. We appreciate that very much. Hope everyone has a great day. Let's hear that Buckeye swag, best damn band in the land.